Recently, Blizzard had their latest developer stream for Diablo 4, and even professional Diablo fan himself, Riker, was there as one of the hosts. Now, if you're someone who's really keyed into Diablo 4, a lot of this information wasn't necessarily new. But if you're somebody who's just coming into the Diablo 4 hype train, this was a ton of brand new information that probably either got you really excited for Endgame or put the damper on your Endgame experience a little bit. But either way, there was some good stuff in here. Now, like I said, a lot of this is a little bit of recap, but we were able to polish up and confirm some of the details that were maybe still a little bit foggy heading into Endgame. So what we're going to do is talk about all of the different ways you're going to be able to experience the game after hitting level 50 and all of the different loot you're going to be able to chase and collect. So first up, they talked about world tiers. This is the first thing you're going to experience when it comes to Endgame. Once you hit level 50, you're going to move into your first world tier content. But in order to do that, you need to complete a capstone dungeon. Now, capstone dungeons are longer and more challenging than regular dungeons, and you will need to clear one in order to unlock the next tier. Now, these are not designed to be farmed, they're purely a milestone. Does your build have what it takes to take on the next world tier? If so, you shouldn't have an issue in the capstone. If your build is flawed and you're having an issue getting through this dungeon, then you're probably not ready for the next world tier, and this is sort of their way to gate content. Now, once you reach World Tier 3, you're going to gain access to new features. You're going to get sacred and unique items that'll start dropping out in the world. Now, World Tier 4 will give ancestral items, but sacred and unique are sort of the big ticket items here. Now, the big thing they talked about is that every item in World Tier 3 will not be sacred. So don't expect, oh man, everything that's dropping is going to be sacred and I'm going to have this huge boost. That's not how it works. However, you will have a greater chance at seeing sacred items from stronger monsters. Now, in World Tier 3, Nightmare Sigils can also drop. That'll unlock Nightmare Dungeons. Hell Tides will appear across Sanctuary. Champion monsters will appear. These possess damage resist auras, so you have to be able to have some damage pin, be able to get through these. And then monsters will also have 100% increased experience. They'll drop 15% more gold, and they will overcome 20% more resistance that you have. So things really start to ratchet up once you get to World Tier 3. It seems that World Tier 1 and World Tier 2 are sort of the, hey, you know, these are introducing you to the end game and sort of getting things going. But once you hit 3, that's when the gloves are off, the game starts fighting back. And with that in mind, you need a rig that's going to be able to handle anything that Diablo 4 will throw at it. And that's why I've partnered up with Apex Gaming PCs. We're bringing you 3 custom builds that can withstand the depths of hell and give you a competitive edge. These range from entry-level builds like the Epic, which is an affordable way to get into PC gaming, to the Mythic, which is a high-powered rig that'll ensure Diablo 4 runs like butter. Now, all of these computers are customizable. They can be upgraded, and they can be financed through Affirm, so you don't have to pay the full price today. Instead, you can pay over time and still get the PC immediately to be ready for launch. And to help get this thing kicked off, you can use code Vulkan to save up to $250 off of your next purchase. If this sounds interesting to you, check out the link in the description below to get started. Otherwise, let's get back to the video. So let's talk about those different items that we have. So in terms of sacred items, these are going to drop at whatever level you are, which means you can get your best in slot item for that tier very, very early on. You don't necessarily have to wait until 70. They gave an example that you could get a perfectly rolled ring that's great for a build out there and then use it for trade. For instance, it's perfect for level 70s, but since you got it at level 50, that ring can be super powerful and usable early on. Maybe it's a best in slot ring for a Bleed Barbarian, and then at that point in time, you can either trade it to a Bleed Barbarian player, or maybe you put it in your stash and you keep it for yourself for a future character. So those are sacred items. Now, in terms of uniques, these are the ones that we didn't have access to during our beta. And this was one of the things that you saw on the tooltips during the loading screens that said uniques are going to be build altering. And this was something that a lot of people, a lot of fans were putting some really kind of stock in to, hey, this is going to save the whole build thing, and it's going to provide a whole lot of build variety and build theory and all of that. So uniques do look really cool. So Riker mentioned a unique item that he used during his closed door playtest that allowed his druid to be a werewolf all of the time. Now, I remember seeing a lot of comments on my videos talking about druid and the shape shifting and it being temporary was sort of a bummer. So there are uniques out there that are going to be very powerful, that'll allow you to shapeshift permanently, and they will be sort of build altering. So those are going to be chase items for those shapeshifter druid mains. So not all is lost there. Now remember, uniques do start dropping in World Tier 3, and we will have a small chance at seeing them there. Then as we level, more and more uniques will become available, and they'll start dropping within their preferred level ranges. We did get an example of some uniques you can see here. Now there's a Shaco that is literally unreal. I mean, +4 to all stats, damage reduction, top tier attributes. It's a wild looking unique. It's going to be a chase item for almost every build out there. So seeing that type of stuff is really, really cool, because I'm not gonna lie, I was worried. I was worried that we weren't going to have items that were going to be interesting to chase after, especially after seeing what we had access to during the beta. So that's world tiers, that is sacred items and uniques. The next thing they talked about at length were hell tides. So hell tides are random events in Sanctuary that'll sort of cause the sky to like darken, new enemies will appear, and then as you go and you kill these enemies, they're going to drop cinders, which can be collected and then used to open caches that are found within the hell tide area. Now when you die, you're going to lose half of your cinders, and when you leave the zone, you'll lose those cinders as well, and you cannot recover them. So it's not like if you die, you can go back and pick them back up. They're truly just gone. Now, each one of those caches that you can use the cinders on are tied to an item slot, and they're all going to have different costs. And this allows you to target farm specific slots, which is going to be super, super nice, because these are going to be one of those things where you run up and you look and you're like, oh man, there's a cache for boots and I really need some new boots. So the boots cache costs 100 cinders. So I need to go farm and then get, let's say 500 cinders, be able to open 5 of the boot chests. And that's sort of the way this thing was described. Now, the caches are not going to be in the exact same location every single time you get into the hell tide. They are randomized each time a hell tide spawns. Now, the trick here is that these hell tides have a 1 hour timer, and it's not 1 hour from when you enter, it's just an hour. So you could show up with 5 minutes left, you could show up with 55 minutes left. So it's all about you kind of pacing yourself, figuring out what's the most important thing that you want to open, how can you get the cinders in the quickest manner in order to open it, and then get the most bang for your buck during that time. And to kind of complicate things a little bit more, the Butcher will also show up occasionally in these to really torment you as the player. So that's something you have to look out for. And then lastly, they also mention that there are special crafting materials that'll drop from hell tides as well. So there is more incentive outside of just loot to make sure you go and do these things. So those are hell tides. To me, they sound really cool. I'm curious to see how they actually perform. I know in my previous video, we talked about, you know, this is sort of a novelty from 2006, but is it going to be something that's truly impactful and engaging in 2023? So we'll have to wait and see, but that's hell tides. Let's move into nightmare dungeons. So nightmare dungeons are going to be sort of the farmable top tier content, and these are replacing rifts in a way. So nightmare dungeons are more hardcore, intense versions of dungeons that you do throughout the campaign. And these are accessible by using a sigil. Now you can find these sigils out in the world. You can find them by completing Whispers of the Dead, which are bounties, or from nightmare dungeons themselves. Now, if you have extra sigils or ones you don't want, then you can break them down at the occultist in town, and you can turn them into dust. And then you can use that dust to craft a new sigil that might be more interesting, or maybe it works with your build a little bit better. So if, for instance, you're like a lightning sork and you go into a nightmare dungeon, you get a sigil that is enemies have like double lightning resistance, then it's not really going to work out well for you. So you can break that one down instead and see if you can get a new sigil that might work a little bit better. So nightmare dungeons are going to have various modifiers for the dungeon based on the sigils used. So we can see some examples here of sigils that have pluses and minuses, and they're going to have modifiers that work with you and work against you. So once you go up and you use a sigil at a nightmare dungeon, a new portal will open, and then you're going to be able to go inside. Now, once inside, those modifiers immediately start taking effect, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult. You're going to have new objectives to complete, you're going to have new enemies, and you're going to have stronger enemies that you need to overcome. And then periodically throughout the Nightmare Dungeon, there is a chance that a Nightmare Portal will open and pull in enemies from other regions. For instance, if you're fighting demons and suddenly goatmen appear, or you're fighting spiders and then suddenly demons appear, that's going to be something that you're going to have to take care of, because obviously they have different toolkits, different skills, and you might get into a bind where it's some pretty nasty combinations that you have to deal with. The developers mentioned that these are going to be really, really good places to farm for sacred and ancestral items. And this is also where you can upgrade your paragon glyphs, which we'll get into what these are in a moment, but this sort of works like gems from Diablo 3. So when you reach the end of your dungeon, you can choose a glyph to upgrade to make it more powerful and have a larger radius on your paragon board. Now, they mentioned that these glyphs will be extremely powerful and can be even more impactful to your build than uniques and legendaries. So upgrading these is going to be truly one of the main things you want to do in order to increase your power. Now, Nightmare Dungeons are accessible at World Tier 3, and they will scale up to level 150. And remember, players cap out at 100, so this is going to be extremely challenging content as we get further and further into negative level territory. So now that we talked about Nightmare Dungeons and everything else, let's talk about the endgame progression system, the Paragon boards. So Paragon boards are something we've talked about at length quite a bit, and these are boards full of nodes that you can unlock, and as you go through and unlock them, you can work towards different colored nodes like legendary nodes, rare nodes, and these are going to be the main source of a lot of your attribute bonuses. So let's talk about all of the different tiles you're going to have access to. So first up, we have normal tiles. These are +5 tiles. They're small little stat boosts. Then we have magic nodes. These are going to provide different stats that might be harder to find on items or on gear. They're going to show things like crackling energy, which is specific to Sorks. You're going to see things like increased rage or increased berserk time. Those are all going to be things that'll be on the board themselves. And this is a good time to mention that these boards will be class specific and also themed. So for instance, the ones we've seen in the dev stream are all for a lightning Sork, whereas there's other ones for an incinerate Sork or a fire Sork. So being able to choose the right board and being able to use the one that best suits your class or your theme or fantasy that you want to have for that class is going to be very, very important. So outside of magic nodes, we also have rare nodes. These are going to give powerful effects, but they also have a bonus effect if you reach a certain threshold. So in this example, we have a dexterity threshold, and once you pass, you're going to unlock a bonus. Now, these requirements will raise as you unlock and snap on more boards. The devs warned us that it's not going to be ideal to simply blast through a board as quickly as you possibly can and snap on more and more and more trying to get rare nodes, because there will be a rising threshold that you will not be able to meet. So it's preferable to just max out your board, get everything you want to get, and then snap on a new board. That way you're naturally raising your attributes to unlock those thresholds. And then lastly, we have legendary nodes. These come one to a board, and they're going to be unique to the Paragon system and to that specific class. These are extremely powerful, and they're themed to the board. So for instance, we talked about the Lightning Sork board. This is a Lightning Sork specific legendary node. Now, glyphs are the last thing that you're going to be interacting with when it comes to Paragon boards. These are going to be something you can insert into a socket, and these will affect nearby nodes, but they'll also be fueled by nearby nodes. So we can see here that if you purchase the dexterity nodes nearby, you're going to get a bonus effect in addition to the powerful effect that the glyph already provides. They also mentioned there will be a grand total of 220 Paragon points at max level, and you can spend those however you would like to across as many boards as you would like to, but that's what the cap is. So this is not an infinite system, and it's not meant to be an infinite progression system. So everyone, those are the big reveals for Endgame for the Riker plus Blizzard dev stream. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Does this sound interesting? Do you think it's going to be enough to kind of keep you engaged? And what do you think about the Paragon board system? I'm curious what everybody kind of feels there. Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.